So guys, what's going on? I hope you guys are well. So Billy Joe Saunders comes out and says that he has all the tools to beat Saul Canelo Alvarez. He says that it's not about money, this fight. It's not about money, and the reason why he turned down the fight previously, because he just doesn't want to turn up for a paycheck. He believes that he has the tools and the ability to beat Saul Canelo Alvarez, and he's not just going there to turn up and pick up a check. He goes, the money comes with it, but he feels he has the ability and the tools, like I said, to beat Saul Canelo Alvarez. Guys, I've been watching boxing for a very long time. I've been watching boxing for nearly over a decade, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of you that are subscribed to me that have probably been watching boxing for 2 decades, 3 decades. Some of you are a lot older than me, so you've been watching for boxing even longer than me. Please educate me on how you see Saunders winning this fight, because I see one guy that's very skilled, that's a very good boxer, that's got a granite chin, that doesn't tire in the later rounds. I see one guy in Saunders who's very slick, good boxer, but doesn't have that much power. His experience at world level is limited. He's never fought anyone anywhere near as close as good as Canelo, right? And he's looked lackluster in most of his performances that he's had of late. And in some of his big fights, apart from one where he looked outstanding, he's looked subpar. Even against the ones that he won against Andy Lee was a majority decision. Chris Eubanks split decision. So I'm struggling to and even in the Sufi fight where he became 168-pound champion, that guy was a very low-level fighter, and even he rocked Billy Joe Saunders. Now, the fact is, he's undefeated. He's never taken an L. But that's down to the fact that his level of competition has been fairly poor. And for me, that's all the champions at 168. I think all of their competition's been very poor. Apart from Canelo, Plant's not fought nobody. Benavidez is not fought nobody, even though he's not a champion. And Callum Smith had really fought nobody. He fought George Groves, but George Groves was past his best. So all of these guys that we keep talking about, Charlo, Andrade, Billy Joe Saunders, all of these guys' resumes are fairly poor. I will say Billy Joe Saunders' resume out of all of these guys, that the names that I mentioned, is probably the best, but that's because the other guys have fought literally no one, and Billy Joe Saunders has fought a few names that we've heard of. But even his resume is really bad for the guy that's been around as long as he has. His resume is fairly poor. And I just don't see what a lot of you guys see when you say his style, Saunders' style. When I don't think he's the slick. I think he's slick, but I don't think he's anywhere near as slick as Lara. Lara for me was a better fighter than Billy Joe Saunders. Lara was more proven. Lara's got a better resume. Lara's a Cuban who are just born to box and great slick fighters. Billy Joe Saunders is slick and he's a good fighter, but there's nothing that he's done in his career thus far that tells me he beats Canelo. But yet there's so many of his fans. Maybe it's his fanboys that are backing him, but I'm going to be honest with you. I just can't see it. I can't see a guy that hasn't lived a life, hasn't had the experience at world level, elite experience at world level. He hasn't had the big fight experience that Canelo has virtually every fight, because Canelo's fighting top tier competition, right? I just don't see it. I don't see the style that people keep talking about that gives Canelo trouble in Saunders being a problem for Canelo. I think maybe for a couple of rounds, and then after that Canelo's going to start cutting the ring off and getting to him. And I do think I think Callum Smith was tough and he was able to take the punishment. I don't think Billy Joe Saunders is going to be able to take the punishment. I think Billy Joe Saunders could get knocked out badly. Like, I'm talking a knockout, brutal knockout. Because I don't think he's going to have the durability of a Callum Smith. The only thing is, can Canelo land? Canelo might not need to land a lot. He might just need to land one. You know, it's not going to be easy for Canelo to land. Listen, when Canelo fought Khan, who's a lot faster than Billy Joe, by the way, hand speed and foot speed, a lot faster than Billy Joe. He's smaller. He's a lot quicker. Right? Canelo didn't land much on Khan. He was struggling to land on Khan. He was missing a lot of shots. But that was because Khan was extremely fast. And I expect the same with Billy Joe. Although Billy Joe, like I said, is not as quick as Khan because he's bigger. But I still expect Billy Joe's strengths are his speed and his movement. Billy Joe Saunders is obviously going to be able to absorb a better shot than what Khan was because he's a lot bigger. But I expect if Martin Murray could land punches on Billy Joe Saunders, if Andy Lee could land punches on Billy Joe Saunders, if Shifa Asufi could land punches on Billy, those guys could land punches on Billy Joe Saunders. Chris Eubank landed punches on Billy. What makes you think Canelo's not? And I know people are going to say, well, look at his performance against David Lemieux. David Lemieux is rubbish compared to Canelo. There's no comparison. It's like comparing like a dog to a lion. There isn't no comparison. Honestly, there's no comparison. It's literally comparing a dog to a lion and say who would win in a fight. There's no comparison between Lemieux and Canelo. Let me just get that out there. There's one that's an average fighter and there's one that's an elite fighter. It's literally levels between them. So I don't want to hear anybody say, oh, Lemieux, because Lemieux isn't anywhere nothing in comparison. Like, for example, when Golovkin fought Lemieux, look what he did to him. When Golovkin fought Canelo, look how hard that fight was. When you have two elite fighters fighting, look how hard the fight was for both. Irrespective of who you thought won, but they were tough fights for both guys. They were tough guys. Tough fights for both men. Right? Whereas when Golovkin fought Lemieux, look how easy the fight was for Golovkin. Look what Golovkin did to Lemieux. A lot of people rave about what Billy Joe Saunders went 12 rounds and really outboxed him for 12 rounds. But look what Golovkin did to Lemieux. And Golovkin, as we know, is willing to take a shot, to give a shot. He's willing to take a shot, to land a shot, right? And he battered Lemieux, literally beat the brakes off Lemieux, right? So what makes you think? What? I just don't understand. What makes you think that performance against Lemieux is why you think that he's gonna beat Saul Canelo Alvarez? It's just not. It's like fair enough if Canelo was like Lemieux, right? He had his feet stuck in the sand like Lemieux does, and he had slow hands like Lemieux does. Then I can understand. But this is a completely different style. This is a completely different fighter. This is a completely different level of fighter. So I don't know why you as Saunders fans are gaining confidence from what he did to Lemieux, because it's, again, you can't really compare a dog. It's like you just beat a dog up, right? You beat a dog up, and that's how you're gaining your confidence that you're gonna go and beat a lion. It just doesn't add up. You're fighting a completely different animal. You're fighting a completely different breed. You know, you can't expect after beating up a dog that you think you're going to go in and beat up a lion. You know, it's just a completely different animal. So I don't get where like Billy Joe Saunders fans are getting their confidence from. Canelo's a completely different kettle of fish for him. And like I said, Billy Joe Saunders isn't going to have was never faced a fighter that's as intelligent. Like I say, I always describe Canelo a very intelligent bull. He's not just a bull that can destroy you. He's a very intelligent bull that sets traps, that's just very intelligent, and he's getting better and better every fight due to the experience, due to the different styles, due to the world-class competition he keeps facing every fight that present a different problem. When he fought Miguel Cotto presented a different type of problem. When he fought Shane Mosley presented a different type of problem. When he fought Austin Trout presented a different type of problem. When he fought Khan presented a different type of problem. When he fought Kovalev presented a different type of problem. Do you know what I mean? When he fought Golovkin presented a different type of problem. He's fighting guys with different styles that are good at what they do, and he's finding a way to win. You know, and a lot of the Canelo haters always say, well, he lost to Lara. He lost to Golovkin. They were close fights. And when you fight elite fighters, they are generally close fights. Something that Billy Joe Saunders and Charlo and Andrade and what's his name, Benavidez and all these guys haven't got experience because they've not been in there with elite fighters. So they don't know what it's like to fight another elite fighter. They've been fighting lower level competition. That's why you guys are hyping them and think they can beat Canelo, because you've seen Canelo in there with elite fighters where some of his weaknesses have been exposed. You haven't seen Billy Joe Saunders in there with elite fighters. So then his weaknesses right now, which there are weaknesses there, haven't come to the front. And when you fight elite fighters, your weaknesses show a lot more, because you're fighting competition that can test your flaws. When you're fighting lower level competition that can't really bring that can't really bring out your flaws, you beat them, and then you have an undefeated record. You're 27, 28-0, and people think you're God's gift, when really it's just because you haven't fought again. And Billy Joe Saunders, to be honest with you, even against the competition that he's fought, like I said, out of his 3 big fights, he scored one of them in Lemieux. But like I said, Andy Lee was a very tough fight for him. It was a majority decision. Chris Eubank was a split decision. So when you look at the 3 big major fights that I look at, 3 of the big major names, 2 of them were very tough. Very tough. And one of them he scored in Lemieux, who was very limited, by the way. So, again, I think people that say that Billy Joe Saunders beats Canelo easy, Canelo don't land a glove on him, I think a lot of you guys probably are looking at it from a biased point of view. Maybe you're a Billy Joe Saunders fan, or maybe you just don't know a lot about boxing, because if you have the opinion, like, I don't mind if you think Billy Joe Saunders causes Canelo trouble. Fair enough, that's your opinion. But for you to say that Canelo won't land a glove on Saunders, that's just fanboyish statement, or it's a statement where you don't know a lot about boxing. Because, like I said, because you haven't seen Billy Joe Saunders in there with elite competition, you haven't seen his flaws, and you just think that he's gonna be able to do what he does against Martin Murray, or does what he does against David Lemieux, against all the elite fighters that he faces. No. Boxing doesn't work like that. When you step up levels, it shows. It shows. Right? And for me, when Canelo fights Billy Joe Saunders will be in a lot of trouble during that fight. He may give Canelo a bit of trouble, but Canelo will give Billy Joe Saunders a lot of trouble. A lot more trouble that he's been in his whole career. So this isn't about whether Canelo can swim, because we know Canelo can swim. He's been into the deep end a lot of times. This is about whether Billy Joe Saunders can swim. And he's going to be swimming in there with a shark as well, which make it even harder. So like I said, this isn't going to be easy for Billy Joe Saunders. I think a lot of his fans are either delusional, in denial, or, like I said, they don't have that much, or maybe it's just fans that don't really have that much knowledge about boxing, because there's no way, if you're making statements like Canelo won't land a glove on Saunders, I think that shows what kind of boxing knowledge you have. But that's my take on it anyway. Billy Joe Saunders says that, he has the tools to beat Saul Canelo Alvarez. Leave your thoughts. Do you agree or do you disagree? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below, guys. And guys, remember to please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.